Somehow I'd really come to believe that there's some sort of confidence in my faith because I can somehow show that evolution is true. And I'm supposed to be in resistance to that somehow.
Let's pivot a little here. So you mentioned you're a confessing Christian in the sciences. Andrew and I both are broadly in that field, and a lot of Christians who are in STEM usually at some point have that, science versus faith collision, whether it's manufactured or whether it's just in the culture. So how has that gone for you as far as navigating the science-faith dialogue?
Well, you're very perceptive. That's exactly what happens. It tends to be very private conflicts for a lot of people because it's not something that the church has always been good at talking about. It's also not something that science has been good at talking about all the time. And so it ends up being a pretty personal and pretty jarring challenge for a lot of us. So I was raised Young Earth Creationist. I ended up moving to the point of view as a Christian who affirms science, and it was really for three reasons. One is I couldn't actually find why there was any conflict between science, evolutionary science, and even a very strict literal reading of Genesis. That's one thing that's there, and people never really believed me on that, but that's why this book ended up being written. That was probably the key thing to make me even open to look at the evidence for itself. And when I actually saw the evidence, especially as a biologist for myself, I saw very compelling evidence for common descent. That isn't evidence against God's action and origins or against his providence. God governs the cast of dice or the cast of lots, but I can't prove that scientifically. And I'm really comfortable with that from a theological point of view. And science doesn't really tell us that God doesn't govern the cast of lots. In the same way, I think God governs evolution. And I can see that it really looks like we share common ancestors with the great apes. All right. The third thing was, so even after all was there, it was still difficult. And what the real issue is that I was placing my confidence in arguments against evolution. Somehow I'd really come to believe that there's some sort of confidence in my faith because I can somehow show that evolution is true. And I'm supposed to be in resistance to that somehow. And the thing about it is Scripture doesn't really teach that. That's not how confidence comes from. Confidence, faith comes from what God did in history to reveal himself through this man Jesus by raising him physically from the dead. And so as I kind of left my anti-evolution idols and found my confidence in the resurrection, there was just no longer any reason. And for me, that's my path to confident faith, where it involves leaving evolution, my opposition to evolution, to be okay affirming it. And placing my confidence in what God did in history through Jesus.